Back in the age of longships, runes, and gods with hammers, life in the Viking world was far from just axe-swinging and raiding distant lands. Despite the rough exterior and tales of conquest, the Vikings also knew how to have a good time. Sure, they worked hard, farming, fishing, crafting, and voyaging. But when it came to relaxing, they made it count. Entertainment wasn't just an afterthought, it was a part of their culture, deeply woven into their daily lives. Archaeologists digging through ancient Viking sites haven't just unearthed weapons, armor, or gold. They've also found traces of how these Norse folk kicked back and had fun. From board games carved into wooden slabs to elaborate physical contests, it's clear the Vikings were masters of turning downtime into story-worthy moments. But don't expect video games, TV shows, or smartphones in this story. Their idea of fun looked a lot more hands-on, and honestly, kind of wild. Instead of apps, they had carved dice. Instead of Spotify, they gathered around fires for epic stories and music. And instead of gyms, they tested their strength by lifting massive stones or wrestling with skill and precision. It wasn't just about fun, it was about building skill, reputation, and tight community bonds. Their games mirrored real-life skills, quick reflexes, sharp thinking, and endurance. Even kids had toys like miniature swords or wooden spinning tops. It was fun, but also a kind of training. One of the standout games from the Viking Age is Hnefatafl, a strategy-based war game over 1,500 years old. The setup: one side defends, the other attacks. The king starts in the center, trying to escape while surrounded. The attackers outnumber the defenders, but with a smart strategy, the tables could turn fast. What's especially intriguing is that the exact rules of Hnefatafl have been lost over time. Historians and game enthusiasts have pieced together versions of it based on old texts and archaeological finds. But no one can say with complete certainty how it was originally played. That mystery just adds to its appeal. Some think dice may have played a role. Others suggest the movements resembled those of chess. Either way, it wasn't just a casual pastime, it was a mental sparring match that probably made Viking warriors even sharper. Beyond the board, younger Vikings had their own ways to stay entertained. Toys were a big part of that. Many were handcrafted from wood, spinning tops, small swords, bows, and figures shaped like animals or people. They weren't mass-produced, but they had charm and were made with care. For wealthier families, there were even bronze toys, shiny little status symbols. Viking kids also loved running games. But it wasn't just casual play. It was a chance to prove speed and agility, traits highly valued in Norse culture. This love for quickness shows up in their stories too. In one saga, Loki races a child named Thialfi as part of a journey to the land of giants. The challenge is wrapped in illusion, but the message is clear. Being fast and clever mattered. When winter came, Vikings turned the cold into their playground. Ice skating wasn't just for fun, it also helped them get around. Their skates, made from horse or cow bones, were strapped to their feet with leather, and they used poles to push across frozen surfaces. Skiing was another favorite, and this wasn't just for mortals. The gods themselves were into it. Ulla, the ski-loving god, sometimes flew down icy hills using his shield like a snowboard. Just imagining that gives a glimpse of how much joy and daring these snowy sports brought to Viking life. Then there was this bizarre but surprisingly fun-sounding game called Give Birth to a Bear. It wasn't for the shy or faint of heart. It involved people getting really close, physically close. One person would lie on their back, while another leaned over them stomach to stomach. The person in the middle then had to wiggle and squeeze their way out between the two others. As odd as it sounds, it was all about flexibility, coordination, and just plain hilarity. Probably got a lot of laughs around the village, and maybe a few bruises too. Physical games didn't stop there. Wrestling was a huge part of Viking life, especially in a style known as glima. This wasn't the kind of wrestling seen in modern arenas with flashy costumes. Glima was about technique, balance, and quick reflexes. Fighters stayed on their feet, and the match ended when one opponent was thrown to the ground. It was clean, it was strategic, and it was a true test of skill. Think of it like a mix of judo and balance games, but with the intensity of a warrior's mindset. Even games that seemed like child's play had their fierce competitive edge. Tug of war, for example, was just as much a part of Viking culture as storytelling and sailing. Two teams would grab opposite ends of a rope and pull with all their might, trying to drag the other side past a central point. The ropes weren't synthetic nylon or gym-class cotton. They were often made from the bark of lime trees, strong and durable, just like the people pulling on them. There was also the leather game, known in Danish as skindline. It was a mix of tug of war and scavenger hunt, with a circle of players holding onto a piece of leather. 4 sticks were placed behind each player in a large square. While everyone gripped the leather, the goal was to reach behind and grab a stick, without letting go. It tested grip strength, strategy, and that Viking-style determination not to let go, no matter what. Even though these pastimes sound simple on the surface, they carried weight. They built character, sharpened the body, and most importantly, brought people together. Strength and resilience were highly valued, and what better way to show that than through lifting? Vikings were serious about testing their strength, and they didn't need dumbbells or barbells to do it. Instead, they used massive stones scattered across the landscape. These weren't just for bragging rights. In some regions, lifting a specific stone was a rite of passage. If you could hoist it onto a platform or even just move it, you earned respect. But not everything was about power and competition. The Vikings also knew the value of good storytelling and music. When the sun dipped below the horizon and the cold rolled in, communities gathered around the fire. And there was always someone ready to entertain, a skald. These skalds weren't just casual storytellers, they were poets, newsbringers, and performers all rolled into one. With rhythmic verse and vivid imagery, they spun tales of heroes, gods, betrayals, and distant lands. For a society rooted in oral tradition, these stories weren't just for fun. They preserved history, values, and collective identity. Skalds often traveled from town to town, bringing not just entertainment, but news from other places. They might have been the Viking version of a traveling reporter, historian, and hype man all in one. Through their stories, people heard of great battles, political changes, and the fates of legendary figures. And when they weren't telling epic tales, they'd belt out songs, some of which have inspired modern musicians, including bands featured in shows like Vikings. And yet, even after all that, games, stories, music, competitions, the feeling that lingers strongest is how deeply social it all was. Entertainment in the Viking Age wasn't a solitary activity. It was communal, shared, loud, and full of spirit. Whether it was racing on foot across a field, spinning a carved wooden top, or sliding across frozen lakes on bone skates, every activity tied people together. It reinforced relationships, taught lessons, and made everyday life a little more thrilling. They didn't need flashing screens or digital soundtracks. The crunch of snow, the snap of a leather strap, the rhythmic clack of game pieces on a wooden board. These were the sounds of fun. These were the echoes of a culture that thrived in harsh environments, yet still found joy in play. And there's something uniquely human about that. Strip away the centuries, the technology, and the modern distractions, and what's left? People who laughed, competed, celebrated victories, and learned through play. The Vikings weren't just warriors, they were performers, gamers, athletes, and artists. The same energy that fueled their ferocity in battle also powered their imagination, curiosity, and love for community-centered entertainment. Take a quiet moment to picture it. A chilly evening in a Viking village, long shadows stretching across the frosted ground. The smell of wood smoke hanging in the air. Somewhere nearby, laughter erupts as a group of children chase each other with carved wooden swords. In another corner, a small crowd gathers around a group trying to win a game of skindline. Leather gripped tight in their hands, muscles straining, faces lit with determination and amusement. Just beyond that, someone is standing on a log, arms raised high, trying to lift a massive stone to cheers and gasps from the onlookers. And in the center of it all, near the longhouse, a skald holds court, his voice steady, rising and falling with rhythm and power. He's weaving a tale of Thor, Loki, and frost giants. His words make the gods come alive, and everyone, young and old, listens with rapt attention. The fire crackles. The sky overhead is streaked with stars. There's no Netflix, no Spotify. just the magic of storytelling, the bond of community, and the joy of being together. That's the heart of Viking entertainment. It wasn't passive, it wasn't about zoning out, it was about being present, fully engaged with the people and the world around them. It was dancing on frozen lakes, racing against time, wrestling with friends, and laughing at how silly a game called Give Birth to a Bear could get. And every single moment fed back into the spirit of the culture. Strong, resilient, creative, and bonded. This spirit stretched across generations. Children who raced or played with carved wooden animals grew into teens testing their strength with stones or strategy with Hnefatafl. Over time, they'd gather around the fire, telling stories or stepping into the role of skald. Entertainment wasn't just for fun. It passed down knowledge, built unity, and celebrated life, even through long winters. The cold could be harsh, but Viking hearts stayed warm with games, laughter, and community. There was something for everyone, running for the quick, board games for the strategic, and storytelling for the performers. Everyone had a way to shine. Winter didn't slow them down. Skiing and ice skating were part of life. Using animal bones for skates or sliding on shields down snowy hills shows just how clever they were. Allah, the ski-loving god, wasn't just myth. He mirrored how much movement and play mattered in Norse life. Even their strange games had purpose. Take Give Birth to a Bear. As odd as it sounds, it was about flexibility and teamwork. It brought people together in laughter and movement. Then there was Glima, Viking wrestling, controlled, technical, and full of honor. It wasn't about chaos, it was about skill, timing, and respect. All of this offered something many people today long for, a true sense of connection. Just raw, unfiltered interaction. It was often wild, occasionally weird, but always real. Even the simplest moments held weight. A spinning top carved for a child, a bronze toy gifted by a wealthy parent, a rope made from tree bark, pulled with all the might of a dozen hands. None of it was flashy. None of it needed to be. It was about connection, presence, and tradition passed hand to hand, generation to generation. And that's the legacy that lives on, not just in sagas or runestones, but in the way a game can teach you something real, the way a simple contest can pull a group closer, the way a story can echo across centuries and still make hearts race. Because even though the axes are gone and the ships are still, the spirit of Viking entertainment, the laughter, the firelight, the thrill of the game, is still alive. If that lit a spark in your imagination, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more epic journeys into the past.